Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Hopefully, you enjoyed working on the Parvaderm case. I haven't had a chance, obviously, yet to look at your results, but should be interesting. And um, hope you've had a chance to look at other people's summaries of their cases, and um, some discussion is ensuing on what you're looking at. I will probably inject myself somewhere in the discussion during the week. Um, But really, it's a learn from your peers, learn from your colleagues, and I'll try to monitor the discussion. And if there's a place where it's appropriate for me to jump in, I will. So sort of like just like you would in class, in a face-to-face class, listen to what other people in the class say, comment on it, challenge it, question it, um, or agree with it. What other people are saying. Um, So today we're going to start going on to chapter 5, which deals with the marketing mix and sort of marketing um, strategies, different kinds of strategies that firms use to approach their marketing plans. So let's kick it off. By the way, this picture here, I took this last year at about this time. Maybe it was 2 years ago now. Very, very cold winter, and I took this at the bottom of Northern Bay, which is in Penobscot, the town next to Castine. And if you look down the bottom here, there's some interesting critters here. Hard to believe that those folks were in Maine. Whenever I show this picture, everybody always accuses me of photoshopping, but didn't do any photoshopping. I was actually driving to work and did a double take when I saw these critters sitting on an ice floe, and got my camera out and stopped the car, backed up actually, stopped the car, got my camera out and rolled the window down and took some pictures. Um, Pretty amazing. What do you think? In Maine, polar bears in Maine, whole family, little babies. What it actually was someone who lived there had cut these polar bears out of, I believe, plywood and painted them and stuck them on an ice floe. They looked incredibly realistic even in real life, and I think they look pretty realistic in this picture. But it was kind of cool. So at any rate, that's where that picture came from. Um, so when we're putting together a marketing plan, we're trying to achieve goals and objectives. Goals, you probably heard this in other classes, other management classes in this program or in your previous educational careers. Goals are considered to be long-term objectives, and objectives are tactical or short-term objectives. Both goals and objectives have to be consistent with the organization's priorities, so mission, and the organization's strengths. They also have to take into account any weaknesses that might be identifiable in the organization. So you don't want to set goals and or objectives that don't take advantage of the company's strengths, or the organization's strengths, don't acknowledge the organization's weaknesses, and obviously that fit the mission and vision that the organization has for itself. It's interesting when you're putting together strategies. First of all, most organizations have strategies for growth. So that's not the only kind of strategy you can have, but it's the most common one. So why do we want to grow? Why don't we just we're happy what we're doing? Why don't we stay what we're doing? Well, there's lots of theories on that. Grow or die, um, and so forth. That's not necessarily true, but certainly growth leads to more resources available to do what you want to do, whatever your mission or goals are. Growth leads to the ability to reach those missions and goals. And in a organization, having run organizations that were shrinking because of a variety of macroeconomic reasons, it's really hard to run an organization that's shrinking. Extremely difficult. The decisions are painful. They have to be made. They are personally painful for some members of the organization, and they're definitely painful for whoever it is that has to make those decisions. So not an easy thing to run a steady state or a shrinking organization, but sometimes you have to plan for that. But first of all, let's talk about growth. And when you're planning a growth strategy, you generally end up with one of these four basic strategies, and you may have some riffs around those basic strategies, but almost every growth strategy in marketing or for organizational growth leads to one strategy, one of these four strategies. So the first one, market penetration, second, market development, third, product development, and fourth, diversification. So let's talk about market penetration first. And these are important because when you design a marketing plan, you're probably going to fall into one of these, even if you don't know what they're called. You're probably going to fall into one of these four buckets when you write your plan. So market penetration, sell more of the product that you're already selling to customers who are already in your marketing segments. So market penetration is growing market share, essentially. I have 20% of the market. I'm going to focus on that market, and I'm going to get to 30%. That's a market penetration strategy. Or I'm going to get to 40%. I'm going to get to 60%. Obviously, I can't get beyond 100%. So market penetration strategies are used a lot because they are pretty efficient. If I'm already known in the market, I already have a position in the market, growing that position, taking market share, taking share away from other participants in the market. It's a pretty attractive proposition because I'm already experienced. I already know what my strengths are. I can play on those strengths. I can build on customer relationships. I have a good reputation, so I can build on that. So that's a market penetration strategy, and a good one in many cases. If you already have a dominant position in the market, it may be difficult to do market penetration. So if you've already got 60% of the market, how hard is it to get to 61? Well, it's probably fairly hard because you're already in a dominant position. If you've only got 3% of the market, how hard is it to get to 4? Maybe not so hard. So if you're in a lower market position, market penetration may be sometimes a more attractive proposition. Market development says I've got my products. I'm not going to change my products. I'm going to identify new places where I can sell those products. Now, this can be geographic expansion. It can be expansion into other segments. So I'm going to expand my my targets, whether they're geographic targets or demographic targets, to new segments without changing my product. Also a pretty attractive way to grow because we've already got the product, we already know how to sell it, we already know what it does and what it doesn't do, we know what its appeal is, so expanding that appeal either geographically or demographically can be a pretty attractive way to grow. So I'm already selling to my product in the United States. I'm going to expand my market to Canada. I'm going to expand my market to Europe. I'm already selling to my product to college students. I'm going to expand my market and try to sell it to high school students. So you've got a different new place to launch your product that you're not already in, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You already know how to do it and what it is that you're doing. Third way to grow is called product development, which means I'm going to develop new products to sell in segments that I'm already in. Now, those new products might be ones that I develop myself, or they might be ones that I purchase from someone else, maybe rebrand and resell. Product development strategies are also quite common. You certainly see them around you. Really, Apple's growth from iPod to iPhone to iPad was a product development strategy. So we had a market, we were selling iPods to customers in a certain segment. We developed the iPhone, which had all of the capabilities of the iPod, along with lots more capabilities. So it was going to the same consumer, but with it was a new product, but in an existing market and a segment. And then you develop the iPad, once again, another new product to be sold to people who already had or had been exposed to your product in the segments you're selling it to. So that's a product development strategy that we're probably all familiar with. Almost every marketer does some product development, has some product development strategy. The business I used to be in, every ski boot company sold socks, sold ski socks with their brand name on them. Did they make ski socks? No, but they branded ski socks. So if you bought Salomon ski boots, the dealer might well have Salomon ski socks on the rack right there and say, oh, here's the socks that Salomon makes. They're really good. They fit tight and they don't bunch up in the boot, or whatever it might be. So they were branding and selling into a product area that they were already known in. The customer trusted the Salomon name, so the customer might be more open to purchasing socks with the Salomon name on them. So that was and you see that in almost every market, not an unusual circumstance. Then the fourth one, which is definitely the highest risk, one is diversification, which says I'm going to either develop or acquire new products to offer in new markets to take advantage of new opportunities. So this is much riskier because now we're going through the whole process, product development process. We're researching and entering new markets. This is sort of like a startup, even though we might be an existing company. This is also your classic conglomeration process. So there are some successful conglomerates out there. There are a lot of unsuccessful conglomerates. Big successful conglomerates that we're all probably familiar with. General Electric is a conglomerate. Jet engines are not really related to, really in any way, to medical equipment, to X-ray machines and CAT scan machines, which are really not related to refrigerators and dishwashers. But General Electric does all of that and a bunch of other things as well. So GE is a conglomerate. They are actually deconglomerating a little bit. Their biggest division has, over the last 15, 20 years, has been finance, and they are selling off all of their finance businesses, which was almost half of the value of their company. So they decided to get out of the finance business, so they're undiversifying, if you will, or deconglomerating, to focus on the things that they think their core competencies fit best with, which is more industrial kinds of operations. They're also selling their consumer goods, so they're selling their dishwashers and refrigerators. That division is being sold as well. So they're going into really industrial business-to-business goods, and where they already are, but they want to strengthen their market position in those areas: power turbines, jet engines, medical equipment, things like that. So another big conglomerate that you may be familiar with is Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's company. It is a pure conglomerate. Really no relation between the various businesses in that conglomerate. Some that you might know: Geico is a Berkshire Hathaway company, as is Burlington Northern Santa Fe, the railroad. Any of you who, well, they're actually all over the country, but he owns a bunch of, Berkshire Hathaway owns a bunch of independent furniture stores. You name it, Berkshire Hathaway has it, and they run their conglomerate by merely investing dollars and letting existing management continue to run the business. So they run it almost like a portfolio. Quite successful. So there's two conglomerates that work. There's a bunch of conglomerates that don't work. And we'll talk about maybe the reasons that they don't work. The advantages of conglomeration, obviously, if you spread risk, right now, GE has um, a large division that supplies equipment to oil and gas producers, and that division obviously is not doing well. But it's only 10, 12% of the business, of their overall business. They also have a large division supplying jet engines to Boeing and Airbus, and that division is doing incredibly well. So you've spread the risk. One area is shrinking, oil and gas, but it boomed for the last several years. And another area is doing really well, jet engines. So you have a diversified risk, so you're not riding really high and then riding really low. Also lets you go to new areas and lets you grow when you're in a market, your current market is not growing. So you can go to other markets and other areas and grow. Disadvantages, it might strain resources, definitely can confuse brand awareness, and probably the biggest reason that conglomeration doesn't work is because management can't focus. I'm in all these different businesses. How do I manage these businesses? And then at senior management level, I have to call winners and losers. I have to decide to go put more resources into this area or that area. And who says I'm so smart that I can figure that out? So that's the disadvantage of conglomeration. So those are pros and cons. Um, there are other places to go. So we talked about growth, and those are the four basic strategies for growth. There are other strategies. I might not have a growth strategy. I might have a maintenance strategy. So I want to sustain what I'm doing. I'm happy where I'm positioned. I want to sustain my market share and my revenues. I might want to, that's a maintenance, that's one maintenance strategy. I might want to take products which I have and that are established and make them more profitable. So not grow, but become more profitable. Or I may want to position myself for future growth by sustaining my current position. So those are certainly maintenance strategies that companies use. Later on in the course, we'll talk about cash cows, and cash cows are things that companies maintain because they throw off a lot of cash, even though they may not have much growth potential. And then finally, sometimes you have to retrench. And when retrenchment is necessary, you may choose to exit certain markets. I mentioned that GE is getting out of, as a conglomerate, is getting out of finance and consumer goods. So they've made a decision to exit certain markets. That's a retrenchment to a certain extent. They're going to be a smaller company when this is done. So they're actually shrinking. You might choose to drop products. You might choose to cut the marketing budget. Always a bad thing to think about, but something companies do. You might decide to shrink your distribution, either geographically or demographically, limit it somewhat. Or you might decide to shut her down. Possibility. In my own experience, I've done sort of all three of these growth, maintenance, and retrenchment strategies in various businesses. I can tell you the retrenchment strategies are always the most painful, difficult to implement, and lead to lots of sleepless nights. And we'll talk a little bit more about those retrenchment strategies now. So retrenchment, look at that first one, filing for bankruptcy. Might be the choice that you have. Bankruptcy sometimes is the right choice. We're not going to go too deeply into this, but there are, in the US, two different kinds of bankruptcy, Chapter 11 and Chapter 7. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is full liquidation, which means closing down the entity, selling off all of its assets, and then distributing the proceeds to creditors. And then there's Chapter 11, which is a reorganization bankruptcy, which means the company or parts of it continue to operate. In both cases, bankruptcy is managed by the court, by the government. You file in a bankruptcy court, and the bankruptcy court appoints a trustee. The trustee runs the business for the benefit of the creditors, not the stockholders. The creditors. Creditors are in charge of bankruptcy. So if people that are owed money essentially take charge in bankruptcy through and are represented by a trustee in bankruptcy who is appointed by the court. Trustee in bankruptcy's goal is to make sure that the creditors get as much as possible from the assets of the company. And so the trustee in bankruptcy makes the judgment whether to allow a Chapter 11 or to seek a Chapter 11 resolution to allow the company to continue to operate, or to seek a full liquidation. And usually it has to do with which is going to do better for the creditors. The creditors committee has a fair amount of input to the trustee. So that's kind of what it is. But a filing for bankruptcy, if it goes through a reorganization, can allow a company to retrench, get rid of things that don't work, get rid of debts in some cases, get rid of leases, get rid of assets that are no longer valuable, that are dead weight, and reorganize. And if the core business is still a viable business, can reorganize and come out of bankruptcy successfully. So successful reorganizations recently, Delta Airlines, now the most profitable airline in the US, went through bankruptcy. They had a lot of legacy issues that they needed to deal with, both with unions and with other leases that they had to get out of, or they needed to get out of, that weren't valuable anymore, that they still had to pay if they didn't go through bankruptcy. And they were able to reorganize in bankruptcy and come out. The creditors end up owning the stock, so the creditors get ownership of the new corp. And the creditors in this case have done very well. They've gotten their money back and more, because Delta has done extremely well coming out of bankruptcy. So that's one possibility, like getting out of markets, getting rid of products, refocusing on core products. That's a really good non-growth strategy. Here we've got stuff that works. Let's focus on what works and jettison the rest. We'll be more successful if we do what we do well and focus on it, as opposed to trying to be more than we can actually be. Limiting distribution or closing divisions. All of those are non-growth strategies. So let's stop there. I'll do a few quick questions, and then we'll continue with the rest of Chapter 5 after this. Thanks.